That's a cool camera, man.
Hey, thank you, Ron. Welcome, everybody. Tomatoito Boxing Show. Coach Jake at T-Town Boxing and Fitness, thank you so much for opening your doors to our show. And hopefully we could bring a new fan base to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
How are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing great, thank you.
So how long has this gym been here?
This gym has been in this location for 2 years.
Okay.
But we've been open close to 4.5 years right now.
Okay. Talk to me about your experience, because I did a little research on your profile, 20 plus years.
Yeah.
That's putting you right around 2000 mark.
Yeah, I actually started boxing in 1993. This is when I first walked into a boxing gym as a kid. Was very infatuated with the sport. I always loved boxing, loved watching boxing. I had it in my family, so I had a professional boxer in my family. And I walked in the gym in 1993 and just started learning some of the basic techniques back in Springfield, Oregon, where I'm from. I fought in some smokers, some amateurs as a kid. And then I got back into it in my early 20s, just trying to find something to keep me busy, because I was done playing football, played college football, and I didn't have much going on in my life, so I wanted to find something to do. So I got back into boxing and started competing again.
So football pulled you away?
Yeah, football and basketball in high school. I was basketball, football, I did track and field.
Okay.
Pretty much all sports, so I was really into that as a high school.
How were those careers? Football and basketball, how did they turn out? Was there any prospect there or any opportunities to go college?
Yeah, so I did play college football. I played junior college football in Northern California.
That's a good reason to be pulled away from boxing.
Yeah.
And then what happened with that career? What dragged you back into boxing?
Well, football was done, and I got back to my hometown. And I was just working jobs and trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, and then boxing seemed like a good idea because I was wanting to get back into shape, And then once I started training, I kind of got that fire again to start, competing.
I know you're very open about saying Cus D'Amato is a big inspiration of yours.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about Cus D'Amato was what drew you into his style and his techniques?
Yeah, so for me, Cus D'Amato was kind of a role model because of his knowledge of psychology of boxing. Just understanding, how to overcome fear, how to deal with fear. And he was kind of a wizard when it came to that stuff. So I've always been infatuated with his knowledge of the psychology of combat, really, in general.
Do you put a lot of that into practice with your fighters?
Absolutely. I think, getting comfortable with fear and talking to people about it helps them deal with it when that time comes, because everybody's going to feel it.
Very good. And then 20 plus years, how many years have you had a gym or been at the helm of a gym overall? I know 2 years here, or just over 2 years at this location. Out of the 20 years, what guided you towards opening a gym, and then and how many years out of those 20 have you been at the helm of a gym?
So I've always wanted to start a gym. That's always been a life goal of mine. But I've actually only been a gym owner for about 4.5 years now. So I've worked at other gyms here in town. Even back in Oregon, where I was from, I was training people out of gyms, and I kind of got to that point around COVID where I was like, it's time to make that move. It was kind of a scary thing to do, especially I have a child, so I didn't want to take that risk for a long time. And then I decided finally I'm just going to do it,
I think those COVID years kind of drove a lot of people, most of us, right, to just branch out, and it's time to either do it or...
Yeah, I was training people at the park, when they closed the gyms down, and had a good little following, and I was like, what, if I can do this at a park, I can do my own space, So
we were talking a little bit off mic about the Tucson boxing culture, and it seems like it's going through a good moment right now. There's a bit of a revival here in the Tucson boxing scene, and multiple gyms now that are becoming prominent, including yours. You got a professional boxer that we're going to talk about. What do you think is changing? What do you think was missing, and what do you think has been the catalyst for the scene?
I think there's a lot of good coaches here in town. People that are knowledgeable about boxing and passing that knowledge down to the younger generation, and it's really cool to see because there's been a lot of success coming out of Tucson recently. When I first moved out here about 10 years ago, I didn't really hear about a lot of amateur shows going on in Tucson or even pro fighters. I know there was probably a couple, but like you said, recent years, probably the last 3 or 4 years, it's been a lot more fighters coming out of here.
And I mentioned it with other fighters that I've gotten a chance to interview locally, and Oscar Valdez. Famously from this, at least attended school here, but claims Nogales.
Right.
And we've had MMA fighters. Dominic Cruz graduated from Tucson High, but claims San Diego, and we never really had that one staple here in Tucson. So now we got 4 faces, and the ones that I've identified have been Jose Ramirez, who in my opinion is at the helm, probably leading the charge right now. Kenny De La Rosa, and Jose Ramirez with Coach Eric Woods. Kenny De La Rosa, Coach Chris Gonzalez. There's a young man who just turned 18, just graduated high school 2 weeks ago in Junior Camberos, and he's out of the Reyes Academy. And then you yourself got Solomon Okoronkwo, 9-0 Super-Welterweight. Talk to me about that connection. How did that come about?
Yeah, Solomon actually is from Chicago, so he moved out here about 3 years ago, and I don't know how he found me, but he reached out to me on Instagram, and I told him to come in the gym and meet me, you know. So he came in, and we clicked right off the bat. You know, I knew he was a good person. He's a high character person, which I like, you know. Yeah. And we started training. I saw he had some talent, you know, and I didn't really know how good he was going to be until his first fight. You know, he had a pro fight lined up when he came to me. And he went out there for his first pro fight, and he won in 16 seconds.
So he had no fights when he met you?
No pro fights. He had an amateur career. Yeah,
okay.
So he was fighting amateurs back in Chicago.
Okay.
But he had his pro debut lined up when he moved out here. So we had about, I think, 6 months to train for it. And I didn't really know what to expect. You know, I knew he had talent. You know, I knew he was a solid person. But you never know till somebody gets in the ring. He gets in the ring and he knocked the guy out in about 16 seconds. So I was like, okay, we got something here, you know.
Yeah.
So after that, you know, we've been going up ever since, you know.
He's got a little, and I got a chance to interview Saul maybe about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I was telling him he has something like an Ike Cortez style, where he hides that right hand and then he unleashes it and puts the opponents down. Do you notice that as well? Is that something that you guys trained, or is it natural?
Yeah, no, we trained it. One thing when he first started with me, he was kind of fighting off his front leg, and he would get hit a little bit too much. So I got him on his back leg a little bit, turning that front shoulder and really working behind that jab, trying to hide the right hand like you mentioned. So that is something we work on a lot, you know. And his defense has really gotten a lot better recently. So
he's 9-0. He's got a fight schedule coming up, what, July?
Yeah, July 12th.
Okay, and you guys are heading towards Sioux Falls, I believe?
Sioux City, Iowa.
Sioux City, okay.
So Solomon is signed to a promotional contract with 15th Round Promotions, which is great because, you know, they can kind of guide his career and I can just focus on being the trainer, which is what I like, you know. So, you know, he's going to fight on their promotion for his 10th and hopefully get to 10-0.
Hopefully get the 10-0. What is it about the promotional company that's keeping him Midwest and East Coast? For most of it, with the exception of a Columbia fight, right? He just had a fight in Columbia.
Yeah, that's where they're from. You know, they're from the Midwest.
Okay.
And so he's fighting on their shows a lot. And you know, it's important in pro boxing to have somebody looking out for you. You know what I mean? So they're building his career correctly, making sure he gets smart fights building up to that point where he's going to have to take that big step up.
I was giving him a bit of a hard time because I'm like, now you could consider yourself an international fighter,
right?
Having gone to Colombia, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So he's starting to grow his brand. What makes you think, or do you have any hopes that he'll be able to start establishing his name here in Arizona and maybe pick up some Arizona shows? So
I've talked to the promotion and we are looking to hopefully get a show in Arizona at some point. I know after this show they are looking for another location, so we're looking at areas whether in Tucson or Phoenix to put on a show out here. Okay,
to have him as a headliner?
Yep. Him headlining, yep.
Wow, that'd be cool.
The idea. Yeah.
And there's two prominent promotional companies, one a little bit smaller than the other. Iron Boy seems to be the big one that runs out of the Phoenix area and mostly Arizona. A lot of the Mexican fighters and Arizona fighters will go there. And then Del Sol Promotions, they're probably the smaller up and coming promotional company, but a lot of fighters starting to debut there and try to make a name for themselves. Definitely. Do you see those as potentials as well?
Well, we'll see. You know, like I said, I don't really control the matchmaking for him.
Okay.
Because he does have a team behind him, which is nice because, you know, they're the ones that are kind of like making sure that he's getting the right fights at the right time. Because you want to build up in the sport gradually, right? So he's fought, you know, at this point he's fought a guy that fought for a world title. He's fought a 3-0 guy with 3 knockouts, you know, so he's fought some good fighters, but we're building up gradually. So when the time comes that you have to step up and fight on, you know, a bigger card, whether it's zone or whatever it is, he's going to be ready for that opportunity.
I was asking Saul about 154, how comfortable he is there. He said he might even have the possibility to go down to welterweight, and I was alluding more towards, are you comfy making weight here or maybe going to middleweight? Yeah. How do you see him? How are you analyzing Saul as far as his weight cuts? And do you see him transitioning up or establishing at 154 for the time being? Yeah,
I like him at 154 because he is big for that weight class. I do think he could make 47, but when you drain yourself that much, you know, it is a little bit scary. So I think he's kind of established at 154. We started off at 160 and decided to make the jump down. Good thing about Solomon, he's super disciplined. So when it comes time for the weight cut, a lot of times we're not even really cutting weight. He's just planning months ahead of time and being disciplined. And we'll get in there, we'll slide in at, you know, 53 sometimes, you know what I mean, comfortably. And that's just because he's a high character person.
You have Saul in camp right now. Are you guys already in camp, or are you guys just barely starting to scratch the surface?
We're in camp, and we're pretty much always in camp, you know. Whether, you know, it's just, you know, staying in shape, whatever it is, but we're always training. We don't take like months off, anything like that. When the time comes for a fight, we just ramp up the sparring and a little bit higher intensity workouts, but we're always training.
The opponent that you guys have lined up right now, you mentioned, has challenged for a world title?
No, that was a previous opponent.
The previous opponent?
Yeah, previous opponent, yep.
That was the one in Colombia?
No, so that was actually a fight. I think it was like 3 fights ago.
Okay.
The guy's name was Dallas Prescott.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then this up-and-coming fighter, is this a step up? Or how are you seeing his career right now? Like, let's just keep gradually building up and finding him step up in competition? Or is this just a stay busy, a tune-up, how we call it in boxing, right? Tune-up type fight, just to get in there, keep working on the skills, and then down the line, you guys probably have something already lined up for a more prominent opponent.
Exactly. Yeah. End of this year, we're looking for a really big step-up fight.
Okay.
This guy is very durable. I don't think he's been knocked out, maybe once, but he's fought really good competition.
Okay.
So he's a durable guy, and every fight's a challenge, right? So we don't know what to expect. But yeah, this probably wouldn't be what you call like the step-up fight necessarily.
Okay.
It's more of like just staying busy. But at the same time, we're taking this guy very seriously.
And I imagine you're analyzing everything, right? So this one's going to be more, let's go for rounds.
Yep.
Let's get him exposed to the lengthier fight.
100%. Yep.
Awesome.
6-round fight. So he's gone 6 rounds once before. So hoping to get rounds out of this fight and hopefully get the knockout. But you never know what's going to happen. Getting rounds would be great as well.
When I spoke to Coach Eric Woods about Jose Ramirez, he told me something that really caught my attention. He's like, I want to get Jose to 20 wins. That's the goal right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, we're just going to take fights, and we want fights that are actually on the longer side for him.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see? I hadn't heard any other coach say that. Like, he's, I think, and sorry for stumbling on the words, Jose Ramirez is at 8 wins, I believe. He just picked up his 8th win. So that's a hefty goal to go to 20 wins.
Yeah.
And then we'll start getting into the shark-infested waters with the champions and so forth. Is that something that most trainers think? They're like, this is the goal, this is the mark, we want to get here? Or is that something that they're doing and everybody kind of manages differently?
No, I think, you have to build up your fighter correctly, and I think you want to get them different looks, different styles of opponents, but you don't want to put them in there too early with a really difficult fight necessarily, What can happen is they become what's called like a B-side fighter.
Yeah.
And you don't want that, So a loss isn't the end of the world, but you don't want to get too many on those record to where you're looked at as a B-side fighter. You know what I mean? So yeah, definitely with Solomon, we're looking to build up his career correctly. Hopefully he'll be at 10-0 after this fight, and we're going to keep building up gradually and getting him different styles of opponents. And when the opportunity comes, the right opportunity, then we're going to take that risk.
What are the biggest things that you're identifying about Solomon right now where you see if he was to step up and say against a top 20 contender, where he could do very well and where he's still somewhat green in?
Yeah.
Being that you know the sport, right? So you know exactly with top 20 what they bring. Obviously, lengthier rounds, boxing ability. Is it something that's going to affect him right now where he's at? Because this is where we're working at right now.
Yeah. Well, Solomon's a phenomenal athlete. So, he has the edge on a lot of people because he is a better athlete than most people. Where I'm trying to help him improve is his fundamentals. Because he did start a little bit late. He was only, I believe, 21 years old when he started boxing. A lot of these guys started when they were 8 years old. You know what I mean? So he has that time to make up for, as far as fundamentals go. But he's making a lot of progress. I'm seeing huge progress in this training camp just fundamentally. And, hopefully by the time he makes that step up, that won't be an issue anymore, and we can kind of just flourish with his athleticism. And
it's great that you mentioned that. It's something that he brought up during the interview with him, where he mentions that he has a little bit of urgency because he's a little bit on the older side.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
He's fighting with urgency. He's like, every fight is serious, and everything is meaningful right now. He's kind of like on the, we were comparing Deontay Wilder.
Yeah,
and that approach
100%.
that started late in boxing, and now he's just, I got to get there,
Yep.
So he has a different type of motivation. He's a father. He's not a young kid.
Right.
He's not in that party scene where we got to try to keep you
Yep.
on the straight and narrow. He's in a whole different playing field right now mentally.
Yep, and it shows because, he's 100% disciplined with this sport. You know what I mean? There's nothing that, I don't have to worry about him going out on the weekends and drinking or nothing like that. If I tell him to run, he's going to do his runs. You know what I mean? Because he has like a real goal in mind, and he's 100% dialed in for it.
You've been with them all 9 fights, all professional fights, right?
Yes.
How has the custom auto approach kicked in? Where have you pulled back? Where have you incremented it? Tell me about that. The
I would say
mindset as a coach.
just the psychology of it. I don't really teach him necessarily the peekaboo style because it doesn't fit his style of boxing. Solomon's good with his jab, using his range. He's got a lot of power. But the psychology I always use. We talk about fear. We talk about overcoming the odds and stuff like that. Especially being an older fighter. A lot of times. In these step-up fights, he's going to have to go in against guys who might be 23 years old. Maybe we're like an Olympic-level fighter. So he's going to have to overcome some odds. You know what I mean? So psychology is everything.
You, being so experienced, have you had any type of rivalry? And I'm going to ask you this because I've asked the other trainers the same thing. And this popped up when the last fight that Ramirez had, they faced off against Freddie Roach. Yeah. And so I started asking the coach, I'm like, is there rivalries that start building? Because that's a whole nother game, right, that we don't see. Right. You watch the fight and you see the fighters in the ring, but there's a whole chess match going on between corners that's off cameras. And a lot of times the coaches will know one another because of amateurs or having faced one another. So you already know, right, a Robert Garcia fighter, this guy's going to be in your face, just throw everything at you. And Freddie Roach, a little bit more stylistic, more defensive. And have you run into that already through your amateur and through your experience where you're like, oh, here we go, we're going to face this guy?
I'd say the biggest trainer that I've gone against was Ronnie Shields. He was the guy that worked with, I believe, Mike Tyson and Vander Holyfield and stuff like that.
Even the Charlo brothers.
Yeah. So, that was amazing because, I didn't even know he was cornering the guy. So it wasn't a rivalry, but I was just looked over and I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy, having Ronnie Shields on the opposite side, But no, not a rivalry necessarily. I try to focus on what I'm doing, trying to be the best coach I can. And
Does it get intimidating for you to see such faces across the ring, or is it more of a challenge?
Maybe after the fight, I thought about it a little bit more. At the time, I was kind of dialed into what I was doing. But afterwards, I was like, wow, that was crazy. Ronnie Shields was on the other side of the ring,
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool.
Everything sinks in.
Yeah, after the fight,
Man, that's really cool. Let's talk about your gym. What separates this gym from the other gyms? We know that usually you'll have some that are fitness-based, some that are boxing and MMA, some that are old school, just boxing gyms, and they're more traditionalist. Yeah. What kind of gym do you have, and is there a route that you're trying to take the gym to, or are you pretty happy with the way that the gym runs and the format of it?
I like our gym because it is a smaller gym, so we have more of like a family atmosphere. It's very close knit. Everybody's very close to each other, and we have everything from fighters that train here to fitness. We do have kickboxing and MMA as well. Everything out of this small space. Being downtown is kind of cool. I like the atmosphere of downtown, so that's cool.
It's a little more high speed?
A little more high speed, yep. And we get a lot of college students that come here, and also business people that work downtown.
Do you have any other professional fighters that train here?
Yeah. So I have Manuel Hernandez. He actually has one pro fight, but he just joined the Marines, so he's in boot camp right now. Okay. So he's going to be in the reserve, so he'll get back from boot camp in a few months.
Boxer or MMA?
Boxing.
Okay.
Yep. And then I manage Julio Munoz, and he's a professional. He's had 2 pro fights. He trains with Brad Carlton at it's not Neutral Corner, MTK.
They're at MTK now.
Yeah, right? MTK. Yep. And then I'm working with a professional fighter named Damarian Ingram, and he lives in Vegas, and he trains out of the Mayweather gym. And I go out there periodically to work with him and actually teach him the peekaboo style.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, that's really cool. So you're busy.
I'm very busy, yeah.
Your schedule's busy. You're running, 6 days a week?
6 days a week. I'm here sometimes over 10 hours a day, just teaching boxing all day, and I love it.
I saw on your profile 11-1 as a professional cornerman. Talk to me about those fights.
Yeah, so that's not updated, but yeah, at one point in time, we've had a lot of success in the pros.
That's probably gone up now.
Yeah, it's gone up. I've had a couple more losses on there, but yeah, at one point in time, I was 11-1. You probably saw that on YouTube or something?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. I
got updated, but yeah. I don't know my record currently, but we've had a lot of success. We've been blessed with not only good fighters, but good people that I've worked with, and it's just an honor to work with these guys. I do this because I love it. The fitness aspect of it is kind of the business, but training fighters is just out of love. And somebody like Solomon, who to me is like a brother almost, you know what I mean? Yeah. I want to help him be as good as possible, and that's why I do it.
And the reason I was asking about the gym style and the format of the gym, you'll have like the franchise-based gyms. They're fitness first, and then see if they attract any fighters out there. There's other gyms that are just youth development, and they're trying to get them into amateurs and so forth at 11, 12 years old, sometimes even younger. And so it's cool. You got a good mix here, and the location attracts a different flow of traffic here, where they could do fitness, but you also attract professional fighters now.
100%. Yeah. We got a little bit of everything, man. And I don't necessarily try to build fighters. I let people come to me because I feel like if somebody wants to do it and they feel like they have to do it, it's going to be something they're going to pursue. I don't push people to ever be a fighter. I've had some talent come to me in the past, and I'm happy to work with them and help them. You know what I mean? But that's not necessarily my goal, is to just build fighters. I'm just trying to help people out.
The loss aspect on the record, those most people will usually shy away from and see it as a negative.
Yeah.
Those are usually the ones that you learn from the most.
100%.
The losses. What did you take away from the losses on the, being that at that point was 11-1, and that's what I saw in your profile. You mentioned there's probably a couple more losses on there. What have you taken away from each, and are they embedded in your mind as far as what happened and what went wrong or what could be fixed?
Yeah, it's the best way to learn. You know, a loss is always hard. But once you kind of get over the pain of the loss, you look back and you're like, where did I make my mistake as a trainer? How can I help this person be better? You know, and you go back and you reevaluate what you did, and you make those adjustments, and you try to improve the next time out, you know.
Can you touch a little bit on them? What went wrong in those losses that you learned, like specific lessons that come to mind?
Yeah, I think for me,
lack of communication. Sorry to cut you off, but lack of communication. I know in the past we've talked about in other interviews about people that are losing their minds on the corner trying to get the fighter to react.
Yeah.
And the fighter, he's just zoned in on the fight. And then there's other coaches that just take a step back. They'll communicate between rounds, and the fighter goes and does his thing. And so you have that mix between trainer and fighter, and a lot of times it's either a trust issue or a lack of communication or adrenaline.
Yeah.
And that takes over. So that's what I wanted to allude to. See if you could touch a little bit on those.
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm still growing as a trainer. I'm still young for being a boxing trainer, and I think every time I go out there and corner somebody, I'm learning something new every time. I've cornered with some very good people in the past that have taught me a lot, and I've learned a lot on my own as well, you know. But as far as mistakes go, I think learning how to run a very, I would say, systematic corner where everything flows. There's only one voice. You know, just maybe giving a couple pieces of advice in between rounds, making sure, you know, the cut man's doing their job and everybody's working together. You know, it should be like gears. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Everybody's got their place in the corner. And in the past, you know,
so you'll delegate assignments.
Assignments, exactly. Yep, 100%. You know, and I've learned that over time. You know, just how to run a more organized corner, so everything is smooth during fight night, you know. And in the past, some of the earlier fights, you know, these are things that maybe there might have been multiple voices in the corner, and I got to step up and be like, no, only one voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just little things like that you learn over time and you improve on, you know.
Do you like being in the lead, or do you know when to take the back seat and recognize that maybe somebody else's voice is coming across to the fighter? Maybe the fighter's starting to listen to somebody else a little bit more, and it might not be exactly what you want, but are you okay taking the back seat, or is it like, hey, you guys know that I got primary, and this is what we're gonna do, and you know what I'm saying?
No, I know
like a battle of power.
Yep, 100%. I think, you know, if I'm the one that's in the gym with the fighter working all the time, I want to be the voice in the corner. Okay. Now, if somebody has advice, we're gonna talk in between the round, and they'll tell me what to say. But I think it's important to have one voice. You know what I mean? Otherwise, what happens is people start talking over each other in the corner, or there's too much information being passed along, and things get messed up. You know what I mean? So I like just one voice in the corner.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Tucson boxing culture. How do you see the gyms, between your gym and the relationship with the other gyms? Is this more of a camaraderie, more of a brotherhood type thing, or is it more of a competitive nature type thing between gyms where this is going to be the main gym? The reason I bring that up, I've seen bigger cities that I've had a chance to cover, LA flooded with gyms,
right,
and everybody's the go-to place in their opinion, right? And so now you got competition locally and broadly, right? Between the counties and the city. Right. How do you see Tucson right now? Because it's starting to find its revival. It would suck if everybody starts competing against each other, or just hating on each other. That way Tucson could become like a go-to hub, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
How do you see it right now, the relationship between the gyms?
I don't see any competition. I think Tucson's a little bit smaller town than some of these cities, and we have a lot of boxing gyms for the size of our town. I don't necessarily see competition. You know, I usually spend my time trying to make my gym as good as it can be. And, you know, I'm not trying to compete against anybody. I'm trying to be the best I can be. You know what I mean? That's my whole focus, is just doing the best I can with what I have.
Is there time to communicate with the other gyms, with the other gym owners? From time to time, do you get feedback and so forth, or does it come across like, oh, he's trying to take my ideas?
I haven't had that come across. I think the biggest time is when you want sparring. You know, you might reach out to another gym and try to get some sparring with them and stuff like that. But as far as taking ideas, I've never had that come across with me. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So there's hope. Yeah. There's hope for the scene out here.
No, I'm all about, you know, I want Tucson to do great in boxing. I want all the fighters in this town to do well, and I support them to the best of my ability. You know.
It'd be good to grow the Tucson scene, right? Because all the attention and most of the traffic ends up just driving past Tucson going to Phoenix.
Right, yeah.
And Phoenix, obviously a bigger city, attracts fighters from all over the place, including south of the border.
Right.
It'd be cool that they stop driving past this area
Yeah,
and
I
then
agree.
they start coming here. You know, we become a notable area for boxing.
Yeah, I think Tucson has a lot to show, man. Like, we have a lot to prove. We're kind of, like you said, overlooked a little bit, but we have talent here, and we got great coaches and great gyms, and I think we, can make a statement in the sport.
Give me an idea for the outlook between you and Solomon's career this year. He's got a fight in July that leaves us 5 months.
Yep.
One more fight to close the calendar year, or can he get multiple fights in the calendar year still?
I think we'll get multiple fights. Okay. I think we'll get, obviously, this fight coming up, and then hopefully we get one later, maybe in the fall, and then possibly one at the end of the year. So I'd like to keep him busy this year. Like you said, he's a little bit older, so we gotta be on it right now and get a lot of fights in and build his record up and be ready for that opportunity when it comes.
All right, let's pick your brain, Coach. Favorite trainer out there right now?
Favorite trainer in the world?
Pro boxing trainer.
Oh man, I love Freddie Roach. He's a legend. You can't overlook that guy. Everything he's done. He's the type of guy that can take a good fighter and make him great. And seeing what he's done with guys like Pacquiao and stuff is obviously inspiring. So fan of him. Robert Garcia has a great thing going out in California. Got to respect that guy and the culture he's built, out of Oxnard. Let me think of one more here, top of my head. Let's go Ronnie Shields. Why not, right? Ronnie Shields is a legend, still doing his thing, and big respect to him. And like I said, an opportunity to corner against him one time, and that was an honor, and I've always been a fan.
We alluded a little bit to their styles, how prominent they are,
yeah,
and how they leave their mark in their fighters.
Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest thing that your fighters are going to be showing where people are going to be like, that's Coach Jake right there. He picked that up from Coach Jake and nobody else.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think is that mark that you're leaving in your fighters?
I always want to have good footwork, good head movement, always using the jab. That's a big thing for me, using the jab to set things up and defensively. And hopefully my fighters have good boxing IQ. That's one thing I want to pass along, is just the knowledge of the sport. How to use the ring, how to control the ring, and also angles. I love teaching a lot of angles, a lot of footwork with that, So that's kind of my mark, I think. Man,
that's great. All right. The floor is yours. How do people reach you? How do people find you?
Yeah.
How can they? How can we grow T-Town Boxing?
Yeah, boxingtucson.com. You can go on there, sign up for a free class if you'd like to. You can call me if you want to. Phone number is 520-345-0962. So train with Jake on Instagram or at T-Town Boxing.
And you got great tutorial videos, by the way.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
On Instagram and YouTube, great tutorial videos and very, very specific.
Thank you.
Very really lesson specific. So those are really cool to watch. And you're telling me you're putting it out there so people could train with you.
Absolutely. Train with me.
They call you, they could train with you. You're not going to send them off to a side trainer.
Nope. There's only 2 of us here, so I do all the work, man, and I love to work with people, so come in anytime.
I love it so much. Thank you so much, Coach, for opening the doors of your gym to us. And we'll be checking out Heck Cali, Toma Todito Boxing Show, Coach Jake.
Thank you, brother.